What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast, Hot Tags of the Week, edition 558, 558, whichever way you want to say it. Tony is not here. He's enjoying some much-needed respite. So in his stead, I'm your host for this week, Callum Wiggins. Joining me this week, as always, Robert DeFelice.
That's right. I am the permanent co-host, and I will likely never be host.
Oh, don't say that. There's always, you can always dream, Rob.
There is always someday.
Someday you will say that 3-digit number at the start of these shows.
That's the dream, Callum.
Well, we have a lot to talk about this week. We thought that even in Tony's absence, and you'll all be listening to, well, hopefully you'll be listening to, I don't want to presume anything, but hopefully the people listening here also, the hardcore fans listening to everything we're putting out. You may have seen this week we did our AEW and WWE combined roster mock draft, or mock draft our cards that we came up from the mock draft. So hopefully you've checked all that stuff out. There's plenty more content coming up next week with the our Mount Rushmore / top rope list for British wrestlers ahead of Clash at the Castle. So yeah, we've still got content coming up, and you'll still be hearing Tony's voice throughout all those because we pre-recorded those. But we want to make sure that we're keeping hip and relevant to all the latest news, gossip, and stuff going on in the world of professional wrestling right now. So hopefully you enjoy this video. If you do, leave a like below, leave a comment on any of the thoughts that we are going to be sharing about this week's wrestling news, and leave your thoughts on any of the topics that we discuss below as well. And yeah, we'll just get straight down into it. We'll cover some more plugs further down the line, but let's just get started with, Tony's not here, but I think in his honor, we should talk about trademarks.
That's right.
Always get started with the trademarks. So WWE has filed for 2 new trademarks for a couple of people who will be debuting on Level Up this week. That is Bronco Nima and Lucian Price.
I know that there'll be a tag team on tonight's episode against Andre Chase University, Bodie Hayward and Andre Chase, and they have a good look to them. Of course, it remains to be seen how they are in the ring, but I'm sure that they'll find their footing.
So Lucian Price as a name, I have kind of no problem with. Like it's a bit out there a little bit with Lucian, but it's a name. I can kind of get along with it. Bronco Nima is a little weird.
The last name in particular, because wrestling in Bronco, I think that can work, but the last name of Nima, maybe it's like a family thing. I know sometimes people choose their, mother's maiden names or things like that. But yeah, that one struck me as a bit odd as well.
I'm more stuck on the Bronco part. I don't think I've ever encountered someone called Bronco, but there's always time.
It feels very jockish. Like that's the top quarterback. He's Bronco. He may even play for the Broncos. I don't know. Like it feels like something that a power guy would use.
He doesn't look like a power guy. Just from the image that I see of it. Like he seems like he's like well built as is, but he doesn't seem like he's a particularly big guy.
I guess we'll see tonight. Because
there's only so much you can tell from a still image of his head and shoulders.
This is true.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of the Broncos, obviously none of these were at the recent WWE tryouts at SummerSlam, but they have named the 14 athletes that have been signed to the company following those tryouts. This is literally just going to be me reading out names and me and Rob just going, okay, and then just moving on because don't know who any of these people are. But we have Kennedy Cummins, Gabrielle Dunn, who's apparently won the women's adult forms overall grand champion at the US Capital Classics in karate.
I did make a joke when I saw that name that there always has to be someone named Dunn working in this company.
So this is the good way to, now you have this one, now you're over quota on Dunn.
That's right. I think that might be the plan.
But what happened when both Kevin Dunn and Well Done were in the company?
Oh, Well Done didn't last very long.
Yeah, he saw pay to that. We got Rickson Opont, who has a stranger name actually than Bronco Nima. So
That is a pretty straight name.
Olivia Ash,
Okay.
Harley White. I'm going to butcher this name, but I'll go for it anyway. Chukwosum Enekwechi.
All right. I can imagine that they'll be. I think they're changing all of these names, but I can imagine
yeah.
they're
I'm just
definitely
giving
changing that one.
Jade Gentile, Anna Kiefer, Brianna Ruggiero,
All right.
Bo Morris, Frankie Streffling, Hayden Pittman, Leah Mitchell, and Kevin Ventura Cortez.
So when you watch the video of these talents being offered the contract, I'm a sucker for these because some people just like really seem like they're overwhelmed with emotion, and I guess a lot of them, their number one sport is kind of out of the way now, and they're looking for something to do. So when you see them get emotional, it is really, it's nice to see. Of course, whether or not they translate into the next, Shawn Michaels remains to be seen, but it is cool, and I do enjoy this style of recruiting. I do hope they mix in some, indie guys on top of it, but I do enjoy this, and I think that we should give them all a chance.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely give them a chance. I do think they have leaned too heavily in recent years in last year or so, towards the professional athlete without having somewhat of a counterbalance of indie wrestlers. But hopefully with the new regime, that balance will be addressed and we can get athletes that are obviously have natural stamina and ability and talent, but then mix it in with people who have more experience actually in the ring to guide those people. So with that combination, hopefully we'll see a greater level of success and consistency compared to some of the people that mostly we've been seeing in NXT in the last few months.
Yeah, and like again, I'm getting into the point where I'm watching NXT more regularly. I don't think that any of these people are, changing the game, but they're becoming more comfortable, and hopefully everybody is able to find their best home in WWE.
So following up from that, we have some congratulations in order for Sammy Guevara and Melo, who got married this past last few days, actually.
So, in addition to the marriage, I noticed that on tonight's episode of Rampage, she's just dubbed as Melo.
Yeah, so Conchi was the surname of her previous husband. So she's gone back to her maiden name, Melo, instead. So that's now how we'll have to refer to her, which is obviously it's going to be a bit of an adjustment. Doubtless on a couple of podcasts going forward, we're still going to be finding ourselves defaulting to Conchi, but I think over time we'll adjust to it, and it doesn't really affect any of her like ring name acumen or anything like that. I assume like if she's in the AEW video game, they can immediately just change the word Conchi for Melo and just find and replace. And like you got Tay J, that doesn't get affected. They're like her tag team with Anna J. So yeah, I think it makes sense considering the fact that she doesn't want to be attached to her former husband's name now and move forward with Sami. And yeah, we'll see how that see how it all plays out. Hopefully have a long and successful marriage.
Yeah, I hope that they stay together, and the wedding looked like a lot of fun.
You see them dancing to Judas.
I did. I thought that was a little funny that they managed to get that in there. But that was really fun. I saw Tony Khan was, dancing with them. They had like a really cool setup for the guests to take like these 360 dancing videos. And it just seemed like a really good time, and I wish them nothing but the best.
So following on with those calculations, we have a few commiserations in order. Whether you can find any commiserations for this first one is up to you, really. It depends on your perspective. But John Laurinaitis was fired from WWE.
Someone's commiserating.
Yeah, it's hard to find a decent level of sympathy for this one, considering how again, we don't know the true inner workings of behind the scenes WWE, but from all reports, he wasn't a popular guy, and a lot of the decisions that he was making were reverting back to quote unquote diva times and more antiquated thinking to what the way that women's wrestling in particular has been progressing and evolving in recent years. So I can't say that there'll be many people that will be sad to see him go.
It's so crazy because he is the father-in-law of the Bellas, who did so much to change that. You would think that, he would have picked up a little bit on that, but I guess by all accounts, not very much. But yeah, it's hard to say anything sympathetic, and I think that it was time for a certain what do you call it? The grandfathered in executives to go,
I'm sure there may be more of that as time moves on, but we'll see. We don't want to speculate too much on that front. But another bit of sad news: Kris Statlander has suffered a injury to the other knee that wasn't injured previously, so that sucks.
Yeah, that really does suck. She was really starting to click. She was finding her groove. I like that she dropped the alien gimmick. She seemed like she was poised to maybe be one of the people who could have beaten Jade. And now she's suffered this setback. I hope that the recovery is quick, and I hope that perhaps she can work on the sidelines as a producer, coach, or just anything, just to, stay in and around the business for as long as she wants to.
Yeah, it would be good if she could still have some kind of involvement, even if it is limited due to her injury right now. Yeah, it's bad news, but she came back from the previous knee injury and seemingly was better in the ring. She seemed more composed. She seemed more about herself. She seemed to understand what her character was now, and as you say, move away from the alien side of things. So hopefully, with the next injury, it has the same impact afterwards. But yeah, either way, it's not great timing for her, but we'll see. This gives an opportunity for AEW to potentially put other women into more prominent positions, but again, that's kind of the constant hope, which often feels that it isn't fulfilled.
Yeah, I think with AEW in the women's division, I feel like it's one step forward, two steps back a lot. But hopefully things continue on the upswing.
Let's talk about a few more news stories, a few stories outside of WWE and AEW bubble. We have the announcement of Tales from the Territories, a new TV series on Vice TV, essentially probably the successor to Dark Side of the Ring, because both the Dark Side of the Ring team will be involved in this, as well as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Yeah, and it's executive produced by Dwayne and his business partner, Danny Garcia. Rock has so much love for the territories. I continuously say that The Rock's love for wrestling is the most pleasant surprise because he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to gush over his time in WWE. He doesn't have to gush over the territories, but he loves it so much. And I am very excited for this. I genuinely love Vice TV's content. I think Dark Side of the 90s is a lot of fun. I think their Icons on Earth that they're currently doing on Star Wars is very good. They're going to do Dark Side of Comedy for the months ahead of this, and I think that's going to be a very exciting series. Vice has a ton of great documentary style programming, and hopefully with The Rock's involvement, this can lead to more wrestling content on traditional TV.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what this series crops up, because as someone who has kind of a more very surface level understanding of the territories and obviously knows the importance of it and how all that stuff then led to the hegemony of WWF and Vince McMahon taking over, and then just WCW, and then to the era that we more understand because of the more recency of it. It'd be great to go into some of the more behind the scenes stories of what was happening in the territories and how it was actually in this quote unquote wild west of professional wrestling. And I imagine a lot of it, I mean, it's Dark Side of the Ring team involved, a lot of it will be quite close to the bone. It'll be very like laying everything bare, and like not all of it is going to be a lot of fun and excitement. There's going to be a lot of dark stories probably coming out of this as well. But that was wrestling at the time. Arguably, that's how wrestling still is in certain circles. But I think that this is going to paint a lot of legendary figures in a very different light.
I think that, and this is one of those things, right, where like when they did the Dark Side on the plane ride, I was one of those people who was just sort of like, well, yeah, I've heard the story, so the Flair stuff didn't shock me. Like, none of it shocks me. This might be one of those things where none of it will shock me, but I can see a few of these stories turning some people off of some names that they thought were, just great pillars of wrestling. Because
it feels like a show where we're going to have to kind of say it was a different time quite a lot.
Yeah, and that does suck, because I know that there are some people who are just tired of that excuse. But at some point, that even stops being the excuse and just like, hey, I don't know what else to say. It was a different time. I mean, look at everything with The Rock's own father. Sports Illustrated just put out a piece not that long ago about how Rocky Johnson sired all of these children, and it was just such a different time. But when you strip that away, when you look at the actual wrestling aspect of it, you're going to see the good and the bad of the argument that Vince McMahon killed the territories. You're going to see where it was maybe good to have a bit more structure, and you're going to see where it was like, well, wait a minute, they weren't in bars, they were in, Texas Stadium and all these great coliseums that are no longer around in some cases. And I'm looking forward to all of it.
What, so you mean that wrestling wasn't just in bingo halls and bars until Vince McMahon came along?
Right, and I think that you're going to see bits and pieces that might make people understand what they're trying to get at when they're always saying that, but I also think you're going to see a lot of, like, no, that just wasn't true. Wrestling thrived, it just wasn't under the best practices. Not that WWE had the best practices either, as we've all seen.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, more Vince McMahon payments have been coming out. So WWE has had to delay their upcoming quarterly report due to additional payments that Vince McMahon made between, I believe, 2007 and 2009, totaling $5 million. Rob, you understand a bit more about this and how a certain former president is potentially involved.
Okay, so these payments, I think when they first came out, everybody assumed more hush money payments for sexual favors, like what we've been seeing to begin with. But I think it is important to note that these are just unaccounted for payments. They don't all necessarily have to be leading back to that. And there's a great article on WrestleNomics.com from Brandon Thurston about how these payments directly correlate to payments made at the same time to the Donald Trump Foundation. And it is important to note that Donald Trump was a part of the WWE programming in 2007, and he did reappear in 2009 as part of a one-week angle where he purchased Monday Night Raw, and then Vince bought it back from him the next week. Now, these payments, it's not really known what these payments are for, but the idea that they might actually just be directly linked to personal payments from McMahon to the Trump Foundation makes things even more murky, especially at a time where, listen, the former president is currently going through it in his own right. And I think it's not shocking. Nothing that's come out here is shocking, except for the fact that they keep coming up with more and more stuff by the weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if this was what those payments are, because it's a $4 million payment and $1 million payment respectively. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was like, yeah, well, don't pay me, pay the company kind of thing, like how, much smaller scale example, but Paul Heyman, when Vince McMahon started giving him $1,000 a month, said, "Don't pay me, pay the company," and he paid H&H, whatever it was that was the parent company of ECW. I think it is likely that these were probably just payoffs for Trump appearing on programming, but who's to say?
Yeah, I mean, it seems it would be highly coincidental that the payments were made at the same time, well, in and around the same time that Donald Trump is appearing on television in WWE television. So obviously we won't know until we know, but it does seem like that is a very good possibility that those payments are connected to that.
Well, now I'm looking in 2016. It says the WWE spokesperson denied the foundation contributions as Trump appearance fees, but does say that both McMahon, so Vince and Linda, made personal donations to the Trump Foundation. And of course, like that shouldn't surprise anybody. Linda McMahon is the head of Donald Trump's America First super PAC. So listen, if we start getting into more of the Trump stuff, all due respect, this goes a lot more off of Vince and a lot more onto, hey, let's put the focus on Linda, because Linda is still, working very closely with Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have to see. It seems that at least, maybe not every week, but every month at least, there seems to be more of these payments that come to the surface. So I think we're up to a grand total of nearly $20 million now, I think.
Oh, yeah.
All payments.
It's about 19.6, but the one comparison that keeps coming out is he paid about 5 times as much as he did for WCW at this point. I think we're at a point now where Vince, it's the fact that they're a publicly traded company is just finally catching up to him, because it seems like it's Vince just doing business and just conducting himself as Vince would, and now it's like, well, wait a minute, what is all this?
Yeah, the things that he potentially could have gotten away with during the 90s and 80s when it was still a private company, and now no longer. Well, now it's all kind of coming to the surface through these investigations. So yeah, we'll see if any more comes forward. I'm sure we'll definitely be talking about it if they do. But let's move on to a few other bits of news. NXT UK has had to cancel its next 2 set of tapings due to the BT Sports Studio being unavailable due to UK football, soccer coverage. And apparently this has made things a little bit uneasy in the NXT UK side of things. And I guess it's not surprising, considering that they're supposed to have the BT Sports Studio available for this, and now they don't have them, and it's seemingly up in the air about whether these next 2 tapings will take place, or where they'll take place, or anything really.
So it's interesting. Like, to me, I look at this as, this is either going to open the door to growth of NXT UK, which I think is a lot more likely now that the regimes are changing, or this will just be the nail in the coffin for the NXT UK. And to be fair, William Regal on his podcast this week spoke a great deal about how NXT UK has actually done a great service for the UK scene by making things more legitimate, as we were just talking with the territory system. While not everything in WWE is squeaky clean, the Wild West is still the Wild West. And I can see them wanting to keep it up, but I can also see, hey, maybe now is a time for merging, and we can look at expansion again later on down the line.
I think it's kind of gotten to the point where there's no real need or real point of predicting the death of NXT UK. They're almost at, obviously not nowhere near as longevity wise, but they're kind of in that Impact Wrestling TNA era where it's like, well, surely this is gonna be the end for them, but it never seems to be. So I don't think I'm going to speculate too far on that regard. But
well, my hope would be that, okay, since they don't have BT Sports Studio, they tour, yeah, and then we can be like, okay, cool, we're touring again. Here's the takeovers we promised you, and then the brand can start thriving again.
And it'd be good, like, for them to go back to Blackpool. That was the main home of NXT UK prior to the pandemic, and just go to many other small arenas in the UK. I'm pretty sure they'd be able to do it. The WWE is not as big as it once was in the UK due to the fact that they are on BT Sport, and BT Sport's audience is a fraction of the size of the Sky audience and like what you'd see on like terrestrial television in the UK. But it does mean that there is still the popularity of WWE and the NXT name out there. So I think that if they were able to tour, they would still draw numbers, probably not big numbers, but enough to generate interest. And again, it could be a shot in the arm for the company. It could be a big money losing thing. Who knows? But it might be worth exploring due to this unfortunate circumstances. And apparently there are
tour.
And apparently there are some NXT UK people that are traveling over to the United States for later this month. Charlie Dempsey and the Coffee Brothers have both been named as people that will be turning up on NXT TV pretty soon.
I would love for Charlie Dempsey to be able to branch out. Of course, that's William Regal's son. And from what I've seen of him, he's been all right. When I think Gallus in the US, I think, all right, you come in to get those belts off of Briggs and Jensen and just sort of moving on, maybe. But
that could work.
I like all of the acts that are moving over between the ropes, so let's hope that it leads to some good programming.
So we also have this rumor that was quickly quashed this week of the potential of AEW moving to 2-day or 2-night pay-per-view events. So this was brought forward by Dustin Rhodes, basically just saying in an interview that he's heard rinklings about this being discussed. And then literally, I don't know, it was hours later, but it was at least...
It was at least like the next day.
Yeah, the next day, Tony Khan comes out and says, yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, my hope... I haven't listened to the Dustin quotes. I don't know. I didn't get the tone of his words, but my hope is that he was just sort of being funny. Yeah.
Just a rib. Well, I don't know. I think we're doing 2-night shows. So.
Yeah, because I can't see them thinking that that's good. I still struggle with it for Mania. The only reason I think everybody accepts it for Mania is because Mania's 8 hours, 9 hours anyway. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that they're not doing 2-day shows.
I don't think that it's unrealistic considering the fact that they're essentially two companies. So I could see a scenario where, similar to how in the past we had the NXT takeovers prior to a big WWE pay-per-view, that they could do a Ring of Honor show on the first night and then an AEW show the night afterwards. So it's not a 2-night AEW show, but it's a Ring of Honor show precluding a AEW show.
I think that I'd prefer that. Like if Ring of Honor is just going to act like the NXT and then you get, hey, it's a great 2 nights of wrestling. Because some of my favorite weekends were the 2018 and 2017, NXT into one of the big 4 pay-per-views. I always thought that was a lot of fun. So if it was something like that, I can definitely get behind that.
And of course, the perfect event to do this would be Double or Nothing.
Yeah, because you would literally be going Double or Nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there is scope for it. I don't think they shouldn't do it for every event. I mean, we already have WrestleMania is now seemingly permanently fixed at 2 nights. We have Wrestle Kingdom. It was 3 nights this past year, even though the third night didn't really count at all. But it does have that multi-day aspect of it, so it wouldn't be unsurprising for AEW want to follow the similar route with at least one of their pay-per-view events. And Double or Nothing seems to be, even though there's the all-in and all-out aspect, Double or Nothing seems to be their WrestleMania. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was the event they chose for this.
Yeah, and of course, we'll keep an eye on all of this, but I like the idea more of it being ROH. Because realistically, Ring of Honor eventually has to get on television. And right now, I think he's talking to Warner about it. I personally think that a lot of the AEW stuff is too tied into Warner, and I hope that they have a good enough deal to where they're not ever going to lose that. But I want to see Ring of Honor start to become its own thing so that it takes less away from AEW.
Yes, before we get into the TV talk, and that's where a lot of the news stories and the bigger news of the week is going to be discussed. Let's just talk a little bit New Japan, because that's kind of what we do when we get together. We get to talk a little bit more about this and talk a bit about G1 Climax 32. So we haven't really spoken about this pretty much since it started, but we thought it's coming up to the end. Like the last shows are on August 16th, August 17th, and August 18th. So that's like the final matches. That's when the winner will finally be crowned. So we'll talk about a little bit more about it next week as well when we get to that point. Because by that point, by the time we're talking next week, we'll probably know who the winner is. Because
Right.
Yeah, so we'll be able to talk about all those details there. So these are the current standings. So in Block A, we have Kazuchika Okada at the top of Block A, as you'd expect, on 8 points. Lance Archer on 6, Jonah on 6, Jeff Cobb, Tom Lawler, and Bad Luck Fale on 4, and Toru Yano on 2. So the only two people that can realistically win Block A is Okada and Archer, because they are fighting each other on the final show prior to the finals. And if Archer wins, he goes level on points with Okada, and he also has the victory over Okada, so he would go forward into the finals. But the likelihood is that Okada will win or at least draw that match. So I'm predicting that Okada wins Block A.
Yeah, I can't imagine a scenario where Archer would be beating Okada and in the final block of the G1.
So we have Block B. Currently, joint top of Block B are Jay White and Tama Tonga, both on 8 points. Then there's Sonada on 6, Taichi on 4, Chase Owens on 4, Great O'Khan and Tomohiro Ishii on 2. And yeah, so as it stands right now, so Sonada faces Ishii on the final night, and we also have Tonga against White to happen as well. And we also have White against Taichi as well, which is happening, I believe, August 13th. So tomorrow. So Jay White still has 2 matches left. He's only been defeated once so far. I believe that was. Oh, actually, no, he hasn't suffered.
I don't think he's lost it.
Yeah, it's just 4-0. So yeah, that is how you protect your world champion. If Jay White does win against Taichi, then it means that his final match against Tama Tonga will still decide it, because if Tonga wins, he would win the block and go ahead of Jay White. And also, because the way that these things usually work, if he was to beat Jay White, he still probably wouldn't win the G1, but he would earn a title match with Jay White. So I actually think they're going to have Tama Tonga beat Jay White, and I think Tama Tonga's going to win Block B.
I think that would be a good way to get him up to the next level, but I'm going to go with Jay just because he is the champion. You do eventually have, the other names in the other blocks that can potentially beat him. So I think I'm going to stick with Jay White wins the whole block.
I think that's the more sensible decision. My mindset with that is that I don't think they want to do the Okada Jay White match until Wrestle Kingdom. So this is a good way to just get Jay White, suffer a shock loss to Tonga. They have their match with the title on the line. Jay White does get the victory, and then that means you save the Okada White match for Wrestle Kingdom. So, but we'll see. It could. That's the case. It's probably between those two. Whereas in Block C, it's pretty wide open right now. We have Zack Sabre Jr. on top of the tree with 8 points, and following them we have Hiroki Goto, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Tetsuya Naito all on 6 points, with Evil on 4, Aaron Henare on 2, and Kenta on 2. So it's literally one of 4. So the most interesting match coming up between them is on the final night. We have Tetsuya Naito versus Zack Sabre Jr. So that is probably the decider. You would imagine.
Like the idea of Zack Sabre Jr. winning a block. I think he deserves it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that they do very well to protect Zack Sabre Jr. in these matches. I think the match that he had with Evil recently, I think he won that match in less than a minute. Yeah, 44 seconds he beat Evil. So
yeah, I would say it's his time. I mean, look, Tanahashi feels a bit past the point. Naito, I really think I wouldn't call him their Ziggler, but I would call him, he's of that level where he could always win it again, but I don't see a reason to have it happen.
I'm personally going to lean towards Naito winning. I think they'll go with a bit more of the old guard on that side of things. And then Block D is completely up for grabs. At the top at the moment, and these Block D have had less matches so far, so I think most of them have 2 matches left to go rather than just the single match. But we have Yujiro Takahashi and David Finlay on top with 6 points each.
Well, no, Finlay has 8.
Finlay has 8.
Finlay has.
I'm seeing 6 on Wikipedia right now, but then again, it's Wikipedia.
I'm seeing him with I have this on Fightful. So I'm seeing him with 4-1 record with 8 points. Takahashi with a 3-2 record with 6 points, and then Yoshihashi, Shingo, Ospreay, and Juice all have 4 points, and ELP just bring up the rear with 2 points.
What I'm seeing it's on Wikipedia, but I'm seeing that the Finlay and Phantasmo match, Phantasmo beat Finlay, not Finlay beating Phantasmo. So I have what I'm seeing. Again, maybe I'll just double check it on the actual New Japan website to see whether they have the standings. But what I'm seeing is Takahashi and David Finlay both on 6 points, and then Takagi, Ospreay, Yoshihashi, Juice, and El Phantasmo all on 4 points. But as I say, I'll double check just to be certain. But go ahead, what you were gonna predict about this?
Well, because Finlay would be a nice shock, but I think Ospreay is probably going to take it. It seems like this is a good spot to put him back in the title picture. He, never really got to lose it, so it seems like this is the right time to put him back on top.
Yeah, so I'm seeing on 411 Mania as well, saying that David Finlay does have 8 points, so I'm going to go with that. That seems to be a likely thing. I assume that Wikipedia just haven't updated properly, or just assume that ELP beat David Finlay. So, but yeah, it's quite interesting they're pushing Finlay quite hard on this one, but it's not. They need to push new people, so that makes sense.
Yeah,
also
I'm all for that.
Also pushing Yujiro pretty hard as well, which is a bit more bizarre. But we'll see on that front. Yeah, I think Ospreay is probably the favourite. Shingo's probably then the next most likely, but I think they had Takagi actually beat Ospreay, so if they end up on level points, then Takagi actually has the benefit of that one. Ospreay's final match is against Juice Robinson, which makes a lot of sense because of their recent feud over the US title, and Yoshihashi, he'll probably beat Yoshihashi, as most people do. Takagi's final match is against ELP and Yujiro, and you'd have to say it's pretty likely that he'd win both those matches. Maybe the ELP one is a little bit more up in the air, but yeah, I think it's one of those two are the favourites to get the win.
I mean, I'm all for a Shingo win. I'm all for really Block D is wide open, and I think it'll provide some extra excitement for this G1, even though I think we're looking at A block and B block, and we're looking at Jay White or Okada with the maybe surprise of Kamatanga.
Yeah, so overall, I'm still pretty much very firmly on the Okada G1 train.
Yeah, It seems likely. I mean, I do like that they have an establishment of, hey, the champion competes, and then if he wins, he gets to pick his opponent. But I think Okada winning is likely. And then who knows where they'll go for Wrestle Kingdom.
Okay, so now let's dive into some. Well, before we dive into some TV talk, let's just throw a few plugs out of the way. So, of course, the best way that you can support us if you're enjoying this content and you've enjoyed all the other content we've been putting out in the last few weeks and in the lead up to Clash of the Castle is, of course, the Patreon. So, patreon.com/smarkoutmoment. Check all that stuff out. You'll be able to get that $10 tier above, get access to the dark casts. $50 tier gets you access to essentially pick your poison. So you want us to do something, if there's a particular video or a concept or an article or anything along those lines you want us to do, $50, we're at your beck and call. We'll do within reason, of course, but pretty much anything you'll say.
Yes, I can comfortably say here, because it's me and you, we will never ever do a Mount Rushmore of problematic people. Thank you.
No, we definitely won't do that.
Oh, I mean, Tony could do that one on his own. I'm not. So you could get it from this channel, but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if it's like the $200 tier. I mean, to be fair, I would probably do it with Tony because I have no stake to lose in the wrestling game at this point in time. Rob's definitely more in that. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to not as much to lose, but you have a reputation to protect, and I have respect that. But there's also the YouTube membership as well. Again, that can also get you access to a lot of the Darkcast tiers as well. So you can either become a member on YouTube or become a follower on or Patreon. And yeah, but then there's other ways to support us financially as well. The merchandise stuff, Redbubble, TeePublic. Check out all the stuff that we have, the Smark Out Moment branded stuff that you can find on there, or like some in-jokes on a t-shirt or a shower curtain or a mug or anything on those lines you'll find on there. And yeah, we'll round off with a few more plugs at the end of the show. But now let's dive into TV talk, because this is where a lot of the interesting stuff happens. So why don't we go all the way back to SmackDown last Friday? Because I would say it's the biggest story, but it's definitely one of the hot topics of this week, is the main event segment, which saw the return of Karrion, Kross and Scarlett Bordeaux to WWE under the NXT version of their gimmicks, not the no leather daddy, no mask, no Sean O'Haire ripoff gimmick. I
mean, most importantly, he had Scarlett.
It was Karrion, it was Scarlett, it was TikTok guy.
It was the theme song that we never got in the main roster. That they even grayscaled the screen for 5 seconds. And I think more importantly than any of that, he inserted himself right into the main event title picture.
Yep, so this is a good way to immediately establish we're treating this guy right this time. We know what we had with this guy. So he attacked Drew McIntyre while he was in a stare-off with Roman Reigns. Then Scarlett put the hourglass in front of Roman Reigns, basically intimidating that his time as champion is running low. And it's not because Drew McIntyre is challenging in a Clash at the Castle, it's because Karrion Kross is now coming after that belt. And yeah, that's a big way to reintroduce him to the audience. And I again, we're going to be talking about other returns soon as well, but I have enjoyed a lot of the Twitter, not trolls, but people just making jokes about the fact of how can WWE be expected to just put these ex-WWE guys and put them immediately in the main event picture? I mean, what the hell are they thinking?
I did get a couple of those, because it's funny, but I think this is a smart move, because they're subliminally saying, hey, I'm in charge now, my guys are back, and they're back on top, which is, I think, the closest thing you can do to getting Triple H just walking up to Pete Dunne and saying, yeah, you're not Butch, you're the bruiserweight now, go be the bruiserweight. They're doing a lot of really fun stuff, and I have to admit, this is the most fun I've had with the WWE product in years.
Yeah, I have to agree, even though I think sometimes people might be going a little bit overboard in terms of the overall quality of the show, but it does feel more fresh and interesting, which can only benefit as well. And yeah, I think that it's a lot more interesting time to be supporting or watching WWE at the very least than it previously has been. But also on SmackDown, along with the arrival of Kross and Scarlett, we also saw Shinsuke Nakamura defeat Ludwig Kaiser, which means we're actually going to get an Intercontinental title match between him and Gunther.
Yeah, we're getting that tonight. I hope, honestly, and there's another case where Triple H knows what he has. Let him just go balls to the wall. You know,
it should be a really good match. Yeah, it should be a really good match. I mean, that's something that we have seen more from the WWE side of things since Triple H took over. Is he does give the matches time.
Yeah, I mean, the first week he really put a spotlight on guys like Ali and Gable, and Shinsuke is someone who needs rehabbing badly. So I hope it starts here. I don't know if I want to see him beat Gunther, but I do hope that the rehab of Shinsuke Nakamura starts here.
And then also, as I predicted, Shayna Baszler won the number 1 contenders gauntlet match to be the challenger for Liv Morgan at Clash of the Castle.
Yeah, I believe that I was the one that predicted that, but
I predicted it as well. I predicted it as well. I think Tony was the one that thought it was going to be
Raquel, right?
Raquel, yeah.
Raquel. And like I said, should Shayna win because they know what they have? The more interesting thing here to me is that the fans booed Liv Morgan. This is before Shayna even won. Liv Morgan was cutting a promo and they booed her.
Well, again, a lot of people, and I say people have been putting out the idea about, WWE fans are so fickle and they turn on people immediately and stuff like that. And listen, I'm not saying for any stretch of imagination that WWE fans are fickle, but I point this out at SummerSlam and people just seem to ignore it or think that I was going overboard. But you don't book a finish like that and expect her to be more over coming out of it. She got her ass kicked that entire match by Ronda Rousey and lost the match, but the only thing that saved her was the fact the referee didn't see her tap out. And yeah, and the crowd is turning on her because she is a paper champion.
It's, for me, I get it. Like, that's not how I would have booked it. If you were that insistent on doing a finish like that, the proper thing to do would have had her tap out immediately after the 3 count. But I just find it funny that so much modern fans claim that they don't really care about presentation. They just want to support their favorites. That when you see something where it's like, okay, you're clearly being influenced by the booking of this character, maybe you're not as diehard or just focused on the Smark aspect of things. That's the part that intrigues me, because so often so many people say, oh, well, I'm going to cheer my favorites regardless of how they're booked. And then admittedly, it was a bad finish. Shouldn't have booked her like that. But that was enough to get them to immediately turn.
So we'll see how that feud progresses on the way to Clash of the Castle, and if there will be any involvement from Ronda Rousey, because it seems quite interesting that it's Baszler and Rousey's seemingly on the course to turn heel. So how that goes. Just coming out of this as well, what do you anticipate, or what would you like to see the direction they take with Kross and Scarlett going forward?
I think they're doing a contract signing tonight between Roman and Drew, right? I think Kross needs to come out, not do the full Shawn Michaels Benoit where he takes out Drew and signs a contract, but I think Kross needs to say, I'm facing you for that one, and then take the WWE title off of Roman Reigns. Or Drew can take it off of Roman, but like somebody has to take one of those titles.
One title and take it to Raw, yeah, or SmackDown or wherever. Just because, to be fair, Roman appears more on SmackDown than he does on Raw. It's been a bit more balanced in recent weeks, when Roman is appearing, but he does seem to have more an affinity of appearing on SmackDown and wrestling on SmackDown. So I think that whoever does win that title should take it to Raw. I personally still think that even though the Karrion Kross thing does make sense to be fresh and new and exciting, it's like, oh my god, this guy who's just come in is now WWE or Universal or whatever championship they decide to give him. I still think that there's scope with the Rollins move, because they still have that story of the fact that Reigns didn't beat Rollins at Royal Rumble. Rollins does have Reigns' number in some instance, so even though it'd be heel versus heel, I still think that there's more weight to that.
To date, I enjoyed the Lesnar match at SummerSlam, but to date, I think the best thing Roman's done all year was the impromptu match with Rollins in January. Like, that was the most fresh, fun, and exciting thing Roman Reigns has done. So I would be all for that. I do think, though, they're really missing out on something special if they don't allow Drew McIntyre to win a title.
No, I firmly believe that even if they did do something where they had Kross win the title, I still am, until I feel any differently, and again, they're still weeks away, we're prone to changing our minds, but at this moment in time, I'm still firmly convinced that Drew McIntyre is winning the title at Clash of the Castle. And even if the reign lasts for a week, a month, whatever, I think that they should not sleep on the idea of him winning it in front of a UK crowd.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Roman thing, I get it. You're at like 700 plus days. But that's specifically with the one belt. So even if it was Drew that just said, hey, I want that one, and picks the WWE title and takes it to Raw, I just think like that's what needs to happen, because you're missing out otherwise.
So also SmackDown related, but obviously for this coming episode of SmackDown, we have apparently both Top Dollar and Ashanti the Adonis will be a plan to be involved in the tapings to some degree, which isn't. That's apparently that's what PW Insider is reporting. We don't know what the actual specifics surrounding this is, but interesting that they have essentially two members of Hit Row appearing without the leader of Hit Row.
Well, so this is the part where I go, it's good that they never fully established Swerve as the leader. He was the front because he was the better in the ring. But as long as you bring back B-Fab, and then honestly, I'm only going off of Twitter here because this person did quote tweet something that they tweeted back in September and said LOL. So Carmelo Hayes had tweeted in September when someone said you should be in Hit Row. He said only if I'm the leader, and he said that in September of last year. And today he quote tweeted that by saying LOL. So I'm all for the idea of them coming back. I'm all for the idea of Melo moving up, if possible. I'm just all for this fresh, influx of new characters. And really, Hit Row are new characters, because you can't say, well, they did anything in their run. They were there for 2 weeks. We're being fired. So I like it. And while it's not Cesaro, and it's not Keith Lee, and it's not some of the names that got released that I think maybe those in power now wish they had, it is super cool to see. It feels like they're righting some wrongs.
Yeah, I think that there is progress being made. Again, I don't know if the scope of some people's fans' extent of how much the progress has been made in such a short period of time is probably a bit overblown, but I think that the progress is being made. So that's at least something that's positive. And that's continued when we moved on to Raw as well. So I don't think the Raw episode in general was as good as the previous week's one, but it did again bring in one of the surprise where NXT is coming back around with this very subtly done Dexter Lumis essentially in the crowd, taken away by security or hooded up. They took his hoodie off, but they still never focused the camera on it. And the only thing that you get to see until they obviously released the YouTube video where you get to see Dexter Lumis in full regalia and just like right in front of the camera, it was basically just Corey Graves on commentary saying, "Is that Dexter Lumis?" And then just like literally almost muttering under his breath. It felt very organic.
Everything about like this story, the way that the story played out on Raw, had it felt so much more genuine in the way that segments flowed into one another. You had Kevin Owens, we'll get to in a moment, was being interviewed by Kevin Patrick, and in the background, you see a car accident. And you see Nikki ASH and Dewdrop seemingly talking about this car accident. Nobody touches on it. It's just like, okay, that was weird. But it was in the background. Focus was on KO. Then Dewdrop and Nikki are being interviewed for the Raw Tag Title tournament match next week. And they get interrupted. Or actually, they do their interview. They cut to Asuka and Bliss. And their promo gets interrupted by Bayley, Io, and Dakota, and they're going back and forth. And suddenly, in that same parking lot, there's just commotion. And commotion's happening, and they all sort of look the other way. They go, okay, let's just get out of here. Bayley walks off, and as she's walking off, AJ Styles walks in for the main event. So now you have this weird whodunit with the car. We still don't know anything about the car. And then Lumis is just in the crowd being apprehended by security. They don't focus on it. It was so perfectly done in the sense of like, that's intrigue. That's a fun story. That I really have to give them kudos for that. And that was just one of several things that I thought was really good on Monday Night Raw.
So the interesting thing about the Lumis thing to me is obviously it's another sign of Paul bringing back a lot of his NXT children, but there's two things that first, Chris, one, I want to ask you about these in order. Firstly, so it's about the releases themselves and who was behind those releases. Again, we don't know the inner workings. We can't say for certain one way or the other, but it feels odd that Nick Khan's still there.
He's still in power, yeah.
And he's now in an even more powerful position than he was prior to these releases. And yet he seemingly is, I don't want to say bowing to Triple H, but like Triple H saying, I want this guy back, I want this girl back, I want these people back. And Nick Khan said, yeah, okay, we've got the money available for it. Suddenly those budget cuts are no longer necessary. Presumably maybe John Laurinaitis going has freed up some wage in the kitty as well. But it's interesting that he's now in creative control and he's saying, I want these people back. And they're just saying, yep, sure, we'll do that straight away. So my question is, and we've heard a lot of these stories as well about how forgetful Vince could be in terms of not knowing people that were in particular stories. So was Nick just basically coming up to Vince and saying, hey, what do you think about releasing this guy? And McMahon, probably not knowing who that person is, just said, yeah, sure. And then coming back probably TV like 2 weeks later and saying, oh, what are we doing with Aleister Black, for instance? And just saying, well, we let him go. It's like, what? And then just moving on to something else entirely. I can't say that feels completely detached from reality, that perspective. Obviously, I don't know for certain, but I would not be surprised if that would be the case.
Well, we are. So I think that Nick Khan is on record as saying it's a committee of myself, Paul, Stephanie, Vince, and Johnny. I think they were all saying they handled the releases. I think that there's a good chance that it's like, okay, yeah, let's release Aleister Black, and then where's Aleister Black? It could have happened, but I also think that they know they need to rehab public image, and I think they might be thinking, okay, let's bring some of these people back in order to show that we're turning over a new leaf. If most of them just come back and it's like nothing ever happened, then you start raising the question of, okay, did you just not know what you were doing with them and you were just saying yes blindly? But I think I'm going to go with the guess that it's about rehabbing public image and it's about bringing back as many names that were ready as humanly possible. And to that point, unless he's under a major contract with New Japan, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Bronson Reed come back. He was one of those people who was doing main event and on the cusp of being called up. So I could see him coming back. I could see, potentially some more of the women coming back. I bet if Athena and Tony were available, Triple H would have scooped them up. I think this is about rehabbing the image.
So my follow-up question to that is about Lumis in particular. Is that this essentially like him? I don't want to say invading, but him coming through the crowd, some potentially being involved in this car accident, however we want to look at it. This doesn't align with what we last saw of Lumis in NXT. Whereas obviously we had the Karrion Kross thing, and even though it wasn't what we saw of him when he was in WWE, his character is very much aligned to what he was in NXT. Whereas Dexter Lumis seems like he's serious or he's villainous, which is very detached from what he was in his final run in NXT 2.0.
The only thing that I'll say right now is that even though I'm sure if they did it as a story, it would be fine. I do hope that they don't try to say that these are all correlated. I have no interest in a stable of disgruntled, oh, we were fired guys.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think that they should be separated.
You could have one or two people disgruntled that they were fired, but I do hope that they are separated. With Lumis, it opens up a lot of possibilities because, one, I think that this is better as opposed to him being comedy babyface in a lot of ways. But also, this is a good excuse to call up Indy Hartwell. This is, potentially, depending on how you do this, because it was during an AJ Styles segment, which also had Ciampa, you can weave a narrative that this has something to do with Johnny. Like, I think Lumis is an interesting enough character that somebody has to be pulling the strings. But I also, again, I just do not want it to be, aha, and we're all back for vengeance. Because what are you getting vengeance on? The guy that fired you is no longer in play.
Yeah, we don't want to see a Retribution 2.0. If it's anything like NXT 2.0 to NXT, imagine like a Retribution 2.0. That would be
and
it doesn't bear thinking about.
I definitely have no interest in that. But perfect use of Lumis and kind of gives me hope for the future, I'm very curious to see like what's the landscape going to be when we're looking at the Royal Rumble now.
So let's talk a bit more about the Raw side of things. So we had Seth Rollins against Angelo Dawkins on the show.
Good match.
Which was, a good match. And it's furthering the story that Montez Ford is a hothead.
Yeah, and I think it's also going to lead to an eventual solo run. I like that Rollins is being used in this capacity. I'm almost willing to just sidestep the Riddle thing altogether, almost. Just because that feels like it was a nothing happening program with the old direction, and I'm okay with Rollins kind of helping the Street Profits along. But that being said, I do think that Dawkins deserves his flowers here because it was a fun match while it lasted.
We saw Kevin Owens against Ezekiel, which wasn't really a match, more than a murder, really.
This is probably the most exciting thing that happened because it felt like, all right, Triple H is in charge, Kevin Owens, go be Kevin Owens, and fuck that Ezekiel thing. That's the way it looked. Where Owens, after spending months being antagonized by Elrod and Ezekiel and Elias, Owens just took him out as though he had wrestled Kevin Owens, as though he'd wrestled Steve Austin at WrestleMania, imagine that. And he cut a promo saying, yeah, I remembered who I was. Perfect. That's Kevin Owens that can be in the main event of WrestleMania next year if he needs to be.
Well, he's in the main event of this year's WrestleMania.
That's true. But he can do it again next year in an actual match.
Yeah. This is definitely like one of the people that will benefit most from a Triple H run creative is Kevin Owens. Like, even though I think Vince appreciated his talents, I don't think he saw him as the main event caliber talent that Triple H knows that Kevin Owens can be. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what trajectory he goes on moving forward. And then we had some more shenanigans between the Judgment Day and Mysterios and Edge, and the fact that Edge was apologizing about spearing Dominic. Dominic seemed to whine about it. We had Mysterio against Balor having a match. Edge chased off Priest when Priest got involved. And then we saw the image that has been posted up quite a lot about on the social media of Dominatrix Rhea Ripley carrying the lifeless Dominic towards the ring.
I'm almost convinced that the swerve has to be that Rhea is mostly in control here. Dom likes it, and that's how you get into during the Judgment Day. It's a bit of a more adult theme for a story, and it gets Dominic away from Ray, and they desperately need to do something else. So if it's him being Ripley's pet, like, sure, nobody really does that. You don't really see that story. I think the most successful version of that was Victoria with Steven Richards. So, like, let's play around with that. I think it's a great way to get someone to turn heel, because a lot of people can understand, a child who's been, well, he's a grown man, but he's perceived as a child, getting a taste of a relationship, totally turning him into a different person. And I just think that that's a really cool way to book it.
Yeah, we can definitely see how that progresses. I don't know if I see it quite that going that direction. More, it's just, I think this is just going to be Dominic getting angry at Edge, and that bit being the wedge that drives him apart from Ray. But we'll see. I think it's going to lead to the idea that at the Clash of the Castle, Ray picks Edge to be his tag team partner against Judgment Day, and that gets Dominic angry, and Dominic lashes out at Ray for that and joins the Judgment Day. Again, it's not as imaginative as your approach, but I think it's just the more standard way they'll go about it.
Yeah, I would like to see them branch out, because I think it's a good use for Ripley too, whereas like Ripley lost a lot of her steam, and she's the one who objectively I think is going to benefit the most from a Triple H regime, because Triple H has always gone out of his way to mention her when talking about a future main eventer. So a lot you can do here, a lot I want to see them do here. And hey, I think they even said Edge is going to fight Priest in Toronto, which is cool, because Edge wrestling on Raw isn't something that happens.
So the other most noteworthy thing that came out of Raw, besides Lumis appearing, is the announcement of the WWE Women's Tag Team title tournament, which had been promised for ages, and now with the new regime in place, is actually going to be enacted.
How quickly that happened, huh?
Yeah, no. So we got 8 teams. I'll run through the brackets, even though one of those teams has already been eliminated, but I'll mention that first. So on Raw, we had Io Sky and Dakota Kai defeat Tamina and Dana Brooke to advance into the semi-finals. The rest of the bracket is Alexa Bliss and Asuka against Nikki ASH and Doudrop. We have Raquel Rodriguez and Aaliyah teaming against Xia Li and Shotzi. And then one of the most interesting teams in this is, well, Natalya and Sonya Deville aren't more interesting of the ones, but on the other side of it, we have Nikita Lyons and Zoe Stark.
This is not the NXT team I would have went with.
No, so everyone would have anticipated that if an NXT team is involved in this, it would be Toxic Attraction, because they don't have the NXT women's tag titles. They seem like a main roster ready act, so it's surprising they decided to go with Lyons and Zoe Stark. But I have a theory about that, but we can discuss that in a little bit. So the interesting one for me, well, interesting, just the fact that it is happening in the first place, and also, interestingly enough, again, there's still obviously talk and speculation. There's been nothing confirmed either way, but there's no Sasha Banks and Naomi involved in this. So again, or no like kind of mystery team where they could have filled it in. So it means that one of these teams is likely to win the belts, and if Naomi and Sasha do come back, whether it is as a tag team or whether they focus on single side of things, they'd have to win the titles off of whoever wins this. Gut feeling, who do you think is the most likely team to win this tournament?
Gut feeling, it's Dakota and Io.
I would have thought that, except for the fact that at Clash at the Castle, there's going to be a 6-woman tag between Bayley, Io Sky, and Dakota Kai, who seemingly are going by the faction name of Control.
Yeah, they haven't confirmed it, but it seems like that's where everything's going.
Yeah, against Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss, and Asuka. So I actually think that they're both going to cost each other their matches. And if gun to my head right now, I think it's going to be Nikki ASH and Doudrop win the tag titles.
Interesting.
I'm not going to say for any certainty. I really doubt any team on the right hand side is going to win. The one that I have the most stock in is Natalya and Sonya Deville. But again, I'm not 100% convinced with that. I think just the threat of having both Io Sky and Dakota Kai and Alexa Bliss and Asuka and them being involved in that match at Clash of the Castle. Again, we don't actually know. Do we know when the finals are taking place? Is it meant to be at Clash of the Castle?
They haven't said. I think a lot of people would have assumed Clash of the Castle.
Yeah.
But,
so just the fact that match is already announced, that 6-woman tag, they can't be involved in the tag title match then, surely.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. This would have been the really cool spot for. Is it Knox from that area? Tegan Knox.
Yeah, she is from Cardiff.
Yeah, that would have been really cool if you could have gotten her involved. But I'm guessing it'll take place on a random episode of Raw, and I'm thinking it'll go to Dakota and Io. I also am 100% of the belief that no matter who wins this tournament, if Sasha and Naomi can come back and be like, you're not the champions, we're the champions. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If it does go to Nikki and Doudrop, they can maybe circle back to that narrative of, well, they didn't feel safe. If they wanted to. Because there's so much on the table now that just didn't seem possible before. But I do think it's more likely than ever that Sasha and Naomi will return soon.
So a few of these teams can completely thrown together. So Raquel Rodriguez and Aaliyah and Xylee and Shotzi, that's just two completely random teams thrown together. So don't really have much stock in either of them. The Nikita Lyons Zoe Stark thing. So this is where I think could be interesting, but it depends on when the matches are taking place. So what I'm interested in is if you have them taking on Natalya and Sonya Deville, you could have a moment in the match where you have, and this depends entirely, and we'll talk about Heatwave soon and what happened on NXT. But if you had a situation where Mandy Rose, Gigi Dolan, JC Jane, whoever, gets involved in that match, injures Zoe Stark, or at least weakens her, softens her up, so that she could lose the title match at Heatwave to Mandy Rose, that then immediately propels Nikita Lyons into that, because Nikita got screwed out of this match as well. So it depends on whether you do really want to have Nikita as your next champion, which seems to be, I don't want to say it's absolutely the case, but there's a good chance they want to go in that direction. So that's one way they could do it, and that's the reason why we have Lyons and Stark in this tournament as opposed to Toxic Attraction.
Yeah, and I sort of just feel like the main heel role is taken at the moment, so they're not too worried about that. But I'd also be really into that. I just think that, hey, you have Casey and Casey, who have just finally won the NXT belts. I just think you could have found another team of females rather than Nikita, who belongs in NXT because she's just finding her footing, and Zoe, who I thought would beat Mandy Rose.
We'll definitely talk about that when we move on to the NXT predictions, but just to round off Raw, nothing else of super interest. I mean, we had the Bobby Lashley Ciampa United States title match. Again, good match, but Bobby Lashley retained. But yep, still good match. Omos defeated two jobbers. Okay, we're back to that with Omos. So that's fine.
Hey, look, at least he's on TV. I'd never advocate for somebody to just fall off TV and fall off face of the earth. So I'm glad he's back.
We had Chad Gable against Dolph Ziggler, just a good match between two good
Wild to
wrestlers.
me that like they were just wrestling, and you're like, oh yeah, Dolph, he's really good. It's that time of the year again where you gotta go, oh yeah, Dolph's still here. He's doing good.
And the Dexter Lumis thing was following a Miz and AJ Styles no DQ match, which AJ Styles won.
And that was also following AJ stopping Miz from interfering in the Ciampa Lashley match, which I thought was really good. I think Ciampa has seen the most immediate improvement. Like everything he's doing is hitting now, and I think that's great.
So we had so that was Raw. Move on to NXT 2.0. So this is the I guess the go home show before Heatwave. So we had Nikita Lyons defeated Kiana James. Okay.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was a match. We had the rounds match between Trick Williams and Wesley, where they both came out first of all essentially with boxing gloves before then just going into wrestling.
A wrestling match. I thought that was so weird. A weird choice with this one.
Yeah, it wasn't the most fluid match, but you get Wesley a win, so he gets with 2 pinfalls, so that's fine. Ariana Grace defeated Thea Hale using the Wasteland as her finisher.
Wade Barrett marked out for that. I thought that was that, and Andre Chase in the pre-match promo for this dropping a bleeped out F-bomb was probably the highlight here, where Ariana Grace wanted to sue Andre Chase University for what Thea Hale had done by, ruining her pretty face, and Andre Chase just goes, "A lawsuit? Are you fucking kidding me?" I thought that was funny because, again, they do claim to be moving towards a new era, so that's a good way to show.
So they did a big video package for Bron Breakker and JD McDonough ahead of their title match. Again, I'm struggling to buy this as an actual NXT title feud.
I know. There's a lot more intriguing matches on Heatwave than the NXT title match.
We had Apollo Crews defeated Roderick Strong. Yeah, you can't really go wrong with that match. It's two very good workers working a match.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I think Strong got into it again with the Creed brothers and the rest of Diamond Mine. So that's just forever slipping away.
We had Santos Escobar and Tony D'Angelo had a final sit down before their match at Heatwave, which again we'll discuss in a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, Santos is really good at just promos, and I think there's a lot of charisma there, and I think there's a reason that Santos was a part of the WrestleMania launch party last night. I think he should be main roster bound very, very, very soon.
So there was an on-running segment on NXT as well where we had Lash Legend essentially talking at Malik Blade and Idris Enove for ages until they could stand no more and told her to shut up, and then Pretty Deadly came in to defend Legend, and we had Pretty Deadly defeat Malik Blade and Idris Enove. Seemingly Lash Legend is now aligned with the group, so it's now kind of an interesting trio.
This is a good move.
Yeah, they could take on Briggs and Jensen and Fallon Henley in a 6-person tag as well. So
more than anything, I think it'll highlight the positives that Lash Legend can maybe bring to the industry.
Yeah, I'd say that she has a lot of charisma. So it's just her in-ring ability isn't at the level it needs to be yet. So maybe I don't say being a manager, but being more kind of using that charisma with Pretty Deadly could serve her better than having to be in the ring every single week. But again, we'll see how that goes. And in the main event, we had Zoe Stark against Cora Jade. And Zoe Stark got the victory again ahead of her match. She attacked Mandy Rose afterwards. Roxanne Perez got involved to prevent Cora Jade from using her new weapon against Zoe Stark. So that's basically building both matches up for Heatwave. Zoe Stark looks really, really good. She looks like the injury hasn't affected her at all, and she's like looking really good in the ring, and her finisher is excellent. Really, really impactful looking.
It can be argued that she is someone that is main roster ready.
I would say so.
And
she's definitely one of the more talented in-ring workers on NXT right now.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing the match with Mandy Rose next week.
Well, let's talk about that because we can do some Heatwave predictions here before the show takes place. So we have, let's just talk about that match first of all. So Mandy Rose defends the NXT Women's Championship against Zoe Stark. I personally am going to lean towards Mandy Rose retaining, but I would certainly be very happy with Zoe Stark winning the title here.
I was leaning towards Mandy retaining. And then I thought Zoe wins, and then Nikita turns on Zoe in the tag title tournament on the main roster show to set up NXT rivalry. So I'm going to go with that. I think Zoe Stark can win. I think it should headline the show, first of all. And then Zoe Stark can win, and eventually Nikita turns on her.
Definitely a possibility. We can move on to then Roxanne Perez against Cora Jade. So this is just a singles match right now, so I assume this isn't going to be the feud ender, because I would imagine that they would want to build this to a more violent finish. So that leans me towards thinking that Cora Jade will get the victory on this one.
I hope that these girls get to show something, because both seem really passionate about wrestling, and they're like two of the only independent wrestlers this company's signed in the last year. So I hope they get to show something. I'm reaching into some house show knowledge for this, but I'm going to say Cora Jade wins, and it's because her new bodyguard, Babatunde, or what's his name? Maybe I'll give him another name. Babatunde.
Commander Aziz.
Yeah, I think that he'll interfere and help her, because she's come out with him on house shows. Okay. She hasn't done that on TV.
Well, that's a big bodyguard.
And it's a big bodyguard, and a lot of people aren't.
Yeah. Stupid. Got the other non-title match on this show is Santos Escobar against Tony D'Angelo in a street fight, but there are stakes attached to this one.
There's a lot of stakes.
Yeah, some big juicy stakes. It's almost as big as Babatunde's stakes.
Right.
But we have, if Santos Escobar wins, then Legado del Fantasma is freed from the D'Angelo family. And if D'Angelo wins, Escobar is banned from NXT 2.0. So I like this. It's a lot smarter than doing just a plain loser leaves town match, because that would make it super obvious that Tony D'Angelo would get the win, because there's no way he's moving up to the main roster yet. But it does add that element of, well, it's likely either way. Like, I could definitely see either person winning. So it's almost a toss up for this one. I could definitely see it going either way. I'm leaning at the moment towards Santos winning.
I'm leaning towards Santos loses, because Elektra actually enjoys working for Tony.
I could actually see that as well, because there has been that on-running story of the fact that Tony is always praising Elektra's stuff, and so Elektra turning on Santos would make a lot of sense as well. And you could just have all of Legado go up as well to the main roster, even though it's like them freed from the D'Angelo family. You just have them get attacked by D'Angelo and Stacks afterwards, and so they get taken out as well, and then you just have the unit of the D'Angelo family with Elektra Lopez as part of it. Yeah, I could definitely see that being the case, but I appreciate the stipulation. It makes it unpredictable, so that's good. For the NXT North American Championship, we have an interesting one: Carmelo Hayes against Giovanni Vinci.
I want to go with
heel
Melo.
Versus heel. Yeah, it's heel.
I want to go with Melo, but we'll see what happens tonight. If he does actually pop up with anything with Hit Row or anything like that, then I'll say Melo loses to free him up to just enjoy the main roster.
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to lean towards Melo as well, just because I think that Giovanni Vinci isn't completely established yet, and this gives him at least a bit more establishment just being in the title match. I think that there are bigger names that could win the title, and obviously we've learned that apparently Solo Sikoa's going to be out for a few weeks with an injury, so it can't be him just yet. So yeah, at the moment I think they'll keep it on Melo. And then we have the NXT title match, Bron Breakker against JD McDonough.
Man, nobody in the world thinks Bron Breakker's losing this belt.
No, and I think this feud has been very, very lackluster. I think they've done very little to present JD McDonough as a legitimate threat to Bron Breakker. And if he does win, it's a shock in the bad way, in the sense that, oh, no one saw this coming, but it's not like a good thing. It's a bad thing for Bron Breakker more than it is a good thing for JD McDonough. So, yeah, I think Bron Breakker retains.
Bron Breakker at this point, because of what they keep putting him up against, needs to he looks like he's above the entire roster by leaps and bounds, even though a lot of them have more experience, if not the same level of experience. He feels like someone who's, quite frankly, he's been on Raw. He won the title on Raw. He should start thinking future, but I don't want the guy that he drops it to be McDonough. That's not the way to go.
No, totally agree. And then we'll round off some TV talk with AEW Dynamite. So obviously we have Rampage as well coming up, so we can preview that a little bit. But it was a noteworthy episode of AEW as well. I mean, WWE is doing a lot of interesting things currently, but AEW is doing well to keep pace with them. It started off the night with an excellent coffin match between Darby Allin and Brody King. Bloody as hell because of what happened to Brody very early on in the match. But
yeah, I haven't seen a lot of, like, they were gushing blood.
Yeah. This saw the return of Buddy Matthews, so that's good to see him back. We also saw Sting getting involved, coming out the coffin, beating up Buddy Matthews with the bat, having a stare down with Malachi. But then the finish is one of the best finishes of the year in any promotion so far, which is Darby Allin gets a bit of revenge by hanging or hunged, or however you want to put it.
He was hanging him. He was choking him with
hanging him with the steel chain, hanging Brody King with the steel chain. He drops him down. Brody lands his feet expertly, takes one leap forward into the coffin. The coffin closes the lid straight away. It was perfect.
You couldn't have planned. Like, honestly, I think I've seen cinematic matches that didn't look as perfect as that.
I also forgot to mention that this is it's not just Dynamite, it's Quake by the Lake.
That's right, it is Quake by the Lake.
We had a Tornado tag team match. We had Lucha Bros and Roosh. Oh, Lucha Bros versus Roosh. Sorry, didn't say that thing there. Lucha Bros versus Roosh and Andrade. Fun match. There's a lot of mask action, which basically seems to be this entire feud based around the fact of which one of the Lucha Bros is going to lose a mask in a match. And we had Andrade and Roosh win ahead of what we'll discuss in a little bit more, which is the Trios tournament. So yeah, decent Lucha style match.
That was the right move just because of what they're doing next week. And I think it's good that Andrade and Roosh get some wins, you know?
So let's talk about this AEW World Trios Championship Tournament. 8 teams have been announced for this. Has caused a little bit of a stir with some of these ones. So let's talk about this quickly. So we have Death Triangle against Will Ospreay and Aussie Open.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about this because that just looks awesome to me, those two teams against each other. We have, I'm going to save the other match on that side of the bracket till a bit later because there's something to discuss with it. And well, to be fair, there's a lot of them, so we'll talk about this actually now. We have Andrade Idolo, Dragon Lee and Roosh, Los Faction de Gobernables.
La Facción Ingobernable.
Yeah. Versus the Young Bucks and a partner to be determined. And again, we'll talk about how the fact that they don't have a partner yet based on what was spoken about on Dynamite. We have House of Black against the Dark Order, some trio of the Dark Order of the 4 members that remain of Dark Order. And then the one which is causing probably a bit of a negative stir, which is the Trustbusters versus the Best Friends. So
why are you saying that people aren't liking the Trustbusters?
I'd just say if people don't like the Trustbusters, people don't know who the Trustbusters are.
I guess
because they made their television debut on this episode of Dynamite, and they're going to have matches on Rampage. So we have Parker Boudreaux, the former Haaland in NXT, is taking on Sunny Kiss on Rampage. We also have Orange Cassidy against Arya Daivari on Rampage as well. But it does feel like in a roster which is full of trios, like even like lower down ones, you have the Gun Club, you have the Factory, you have bigger up ones. You could do Wardlow and FTR, or like there's so many trios combinations they could do. The fact that this kind of unknown Ring of Honor based team is, because the first time I saw the Trustbusters was that tag match they had in the Ring of Honor show. It does feel a little bit out of nowhere to just put this random team as one of the 8 teams that can contend for these titles.
I guess I would agree with that. I have been watching a bit more of Dark, so I'm a bit more familiar with the Trustbusters. I like they ran an angle on Dark, which we might see play out on Rampage, where Sunny Kiss kind of just let her team get beat up by the Trustbusters and then talked to Daivari afterwards. So if they're going to do something with Sunny, I think that's a win. But I would agree that maybe this could have been taken by the Factory or one of the Inner Circle pairings or something like that.
So, yeah, it's interesting. I think it potentially could have been taken up by Yas, except for the fact that apparently Matt Menard is suffering with an injury right now.
That is true, yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But the interesting segment that followed this was on a backstage segment where the Young Bucks went to apologise to Hangman Page and invited him to join their team to be part of the Trios tournament. But Hangman Page turned them down, saying that he is loyal to the Dark Order, and if the Dark Order are in this tournament, he's going to have their back throughout this entire thing. And so that leaves the Young Bucks without a partner because they seemingly don't want to take Brandon Cutler along with them. So I wonder who their partner could be.
I genuinely, at this point, I'm trying to think of who it could be outside of Omega. Because if it's Omega in the Bucks, unless Cole and Fish and O'Reilly totally are ready to go and screw them out of the tournament immediately, if they're not ready for All Out, then why wouldn't you just have the Elite go all the way?
Well, that's where I think the predictions come into it. So I'm going to go this like match by match breakdown because I kind of like the way to do it. I personally think the Ospreay and Aussie Open will beat Death Triangle.
I think so as well.
And then we have the Young Bucks and the returning Kenny Omega defeating Andrade, Dragon Lee, and Rouge.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think we have Dark Order defeat House of Black.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably due to like interference by Miro or something like that, because we did have a Miro segment as well, where apparently he has received a gift or received the gift of whatever it is that Malachi Black sprayed in his face from them, but he's going to use it to destroy the faction as opposed to join the faction. So that'll be interesting to see how that develops. I assume we're going to see Black versus Miro, or a 6-man tag of Miro, Allen, and Sting against the House of Black at All Out. So
yeah, I would lean towards a 6-man, but I'm looking forward to that.
But that obviously means they can't be part of this tournament instead. And then the Best Friends beat the Trustbusters. I mean, it could be the other way around. Like, that one is kind of up in the air, really, on my side of things, because I believe that the finals are going to be the Young Bucks and Hangman Page versus John Silver, Alex Reynolds, and Hangman Page.
But he said he wouldn't get involved in the tournament.
Well, that's what I think is going to be the interesting thing. I think that we're going to have segments. This is how I would do it anyway. I don't think that, again, this may not happen, but this is the way that I would do it. You have segments, or you have, during the course of the tournament, you have injuries inflicted to Evil Uno and 10, and that means that they can't participate in it. I would almost do it like this, where you have House of Black against Dark Order, and the Dark Order is like, let's say it's Uno, Reynolds, and Silver, and in the match, Uno gets taken out and is actually properly injured, but Dark Order manages to rally and gets the victory. Then in the next match against whoever, like the Trustbusters or Best Friends, you have Preston Vance take a a serious injury. It could be by just a mistake or a freak occurrence, something like that. So it just basically gets down to the fact that Dark Order have earned their spot in the finals, but they're now down to 2 people. They need a third guy. And that's when Paige steps in and decides, okay, I'll be the third guy. And that I would tell that story because I think it both builds up the Dark Order as a unit themselves because they earn their place in the final, but then it also gets us the Young Bucks, Omega on one side, Paige on the other side. So that's how I would do it.
I like that. I'd be more interested in that than the Dark Order in its current state winning the belts, because I think before Omega was confirmed, when you're looking at it, I think the Best Friends would make good first trios champs because they've been around forever and haven't had a prize to show for it. I think Dark Order would as well. But when you break it down, really, it's either got to be the Elite or the Dark Order because that's the story we're telling. I would still prefer it being the Elite. I'm hoping that's the way it goes.
Oh, it's 100%. I'm 100% convinced it should be the Elite that wins the tournament because not only does it work well for them because they get titles to work around at the moment, but it serves multiple purposes. It means the titles get like as good as first champions as you possibly can. It immediately establishes the belts as super legitimate and super important because the Elite are holding them, and then it immediately sets you on course for a feud that can run for the entire winter between them and the Undisputed Era or whatever they're going to call themselves, Paragon, whatever, for the trios titles. And that could be like a main event feud for your trios championships.
Yeah, I think that is the proper way to go for maybe like a Grand Slam match or a full gear match.
And then during that story, you're also weaving the narrative of Hangman Page rejoining the Elite as well. So yeah, I think that's the direction they should be taking if that's not what they are planning on doing. But again, I think it looks like it's going to be a good tournament, a fun tournament. So I'm excited either way.
Yeah, and I mean, AEW rarely misses, so this should be, at the very least, a lot of very good wrestling leading up to the formation of these titles.
We also saw Luchasaurus get a easy victory against enhancement talent Anthony Henry on the show. Christian Cage got a promo backstage. Jungle Boy went to attack him. Got caught up by security. Luchasaurus came back, beat up loads of security, headbutted Pat Buck as well.
Yeah, they made that like a big deal. Like, oh my God, he hit official Pat Buck, and it's like people get caught up in scraps all the time, but maybe that'll lead to something.
Yeah.
But
I was going to say, I think again, I think I heard this from Sean when the Fightful did their recap of Dynamite. I think it would be a good idea to have like Luchasaurus get suspended for that, and that means that he's not around to protect Jungle Boy going into All Out. I'm still firmly convinced, and I think a lot of people are on this boat now, of this is a long con by Christian and Luchasaurus.
Yeah, because at this point, it seems weird that he's still just like dark Luchasaurus, but he's also trying to help Jungle Boy.
So we had Jay Lethal and his crew challenge Wardlow again for the TNT Championship. Wardlow accepted, but this time when he came down to beat up the guys, he had FTR by his side. So, okay, it seems like we're either going to see another Wardlow Jay Lethal match, or we're going to see Wardlow against Satnam Singh, which the only reason you'd want to see that match is for him to powerbomb Satnam Singh. And
Satnam Singh's too new to just get jobbed out like that.
I'd almost be willing to sacrifice it just to see the powerbomb.
Yeah, because it'll be messy, surely.
Definitely. But we had Ricky Starks against defeated Aaron Solo. It was a very short match, but they made the most of what they had available to them.
Yeah, and I think the point here was that he was able to get the better of the bigger Colorado after the match, and he hit him with Spinebuster. For this feud, I feel like maybe this is a all-out buy-in match, and then they get like a no DQ match or something on a Rampage for Grand Slam.
Yeah, I could definitely see it being beyond just the one match they have. So I think they'd still put it on the main card because Ricky is really over at this point, but we'll see how it goes. Again, knowing a AEW card, there's probably going to be 12 matches on the main card anyway, so it'd be hard not to fit them in. But you said earlier on about how the fact that AEW doesn't miss very often. One segment that completely missed on this episode of Dynamite was the TBS Championship match, Madison Rayne against Jade Cargill. This was not good at all.
So admittedly, I missed most of this, but I did see Jade. She was supposed to kick Kiera Hogan, and it missed by a mile. And I hate getting like super critiquey like that, but it just stands out when it misses that much. And yeah, this was Jade beating a name, but it wasn't like, okay, Jade's having a breakout match here. I think that'll come with All Out with Ember or Athena.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, so post match we had Athena come out, take out Jade Cargill. So it seems like that's going to be the match at All Out for the TBS title. It's definitely a more legitimate threat to Jade's title reign, but again, I at the moment it's a bit too difficult to predict. But we'll definitely do that ahead of our AEW predictions, AEW All Out predictions. I was again, and this is just like a general thing with me. I was very disappointed with Madison Rayne's performance. I just don't think she's very good, and she showed it in both this match and the match with Layla Gray that she had on Rampage. She's just not a particularly good wrestler. So, and I think that Jade being super inexperienced just led to a bad match. So, but we'll see. There's also a backstage segment between Thunder Rosa and Toni Storm that basically said that because Kris Statlander's injured, Toni Storm is now in the number one contendership position for a shot at Thunder Rosa. And they kind of like went about it and talking about it in the way that they haven't had a match already, which they have had, because they had their title match at Forbidden Door.
Yeah, which I thought was a little weird.
Yeah, they basically just almost talked about it as if, okay, I'm coming after the title and, well, we're tag team partners. Like, I guess at that point they weren't Thunderstorm, so it makes a bit more sense. But they had teamed together prior to it. I think that there is a bit of scope to suggest that Toni Storm won't be the one that's challenging Thunder Rosa, or she won't be the
I think it'll
one.
be a three-way dance with Baker.
Yeah, there's a good chance of that. I think it could be a three-way dance. I think it could be a fatal four-way with Hayter as well added to it.
Yeah, and then as long as the belt, I'm sorry. Look, I like Thunder Rosa, but as long as the belt gets off of Rosa, I think I'm good. I think Rosa's just one of those champions where she's like Kofi, where the money's in the chase, and then once they have the belt, it's like, okay, I'm not really as intrigued.
And then we had the main event for the AEW Interim World Championship, Jon Moxley against Chris Jericho.
I thought this was so much fun.
This was an excellent match, and I'm sorry, I know there are people, and there are right detractors on Jericho in multiple aspects, but he came out as Lionheart Chris Jericho with Lionheart music, Lionheart gear, Lionheart attitude.
He bothered to shave, so it looked like even more like, okay, he's younger.
He looked in great shape. He was doing all the stuff that he would do when he was, well, as much as he can do as the Lionheart character. Like, we had some like lucha arm drags, but then just got into a brawl, especially at the moment where he ripped Jon Moxley's earring out of his head.
Yeah, and then Moxley's bleeding. A lot of blood.
Yeah, a lot of blood on this show between this and the Coffin match, but this match was just it's one of Jericho's best matches in all of AEW, and frankly, this is becoming like a Moxley trademark of just having great bloody brawls. So they had this interesting one, which I think again had a bit of a polarizing opinion of Jericho applying the Walls of Jericho and then them cutting to a break, and him having Moxley in the Walls of Jericho for the entire 4 minutes of that advert.
Yes, because you watch it on Fight, right?
Yeah. So I got to just see him have Moxley in the walls, and the crowd got super excited about how long it was going on. And at one point, Moxley like twists out and starts fighting his way out of it, but then Jericho just gets him back into the Walls of Jericho as well. And the crowd was super behind Jericho in a lot of this match.
Yeah.
And I think he just has that effect. He is a living legend in the ring, And so people are just going to gravitate, especially when you put in a performance like this, where like I can't remember the last Jericho match that I've seen that was this good. Probably, arguably, it's the Omega match a few years ago back in Wrestle Kingdom.
This was easily my favorite Jericho match in a while. I also watched on Fight and thought it was hilarious how long Mox was in the walls. Just a really good match. At one point, Jericho takes the corner buckle and he starts bleeding. He's just gushing all over Moxley. And then, Moxley's able to choke him out. There was a moment where Sammy threw the bat in and it missed. And while most people would, kind of get down on that, I like that because I kind of like when things aren't perfectly polished. So I just thought this was a really good, really fun match, and it shows that Chris Jericho still got it.
Yeah, so he had it like they gave Moxley a lot in this one as well. Obviously, Moxley's been a great interim champion so far. They had him kick out the Judas effect. He got out the Lion Tamer, kicked out the bat shot and everything, and then was able to get Jericho into a rear naked choke, and Jericho taps out. And yeah, so Moxley goes 2-0 with Jericho in singles matches. Again, world title match, retains his title. Jericho Appreciation Society come out. There starts a brawl between them and the Combat Club and Ortiz and Kingston and out there and it seems like Jericho's about to hit Mox with the title belt, but then Cult of Personality hits. CM Punk is back, gets down to the ring. He's moving well. He gets in the ring, starts beating up everyone, clearing the ring of the US members, stands face to face with Moxley. Moxley's holding the title belt. Punk doesn't have his title belt, or however you want to look at it. He flips Punk off, gets out of the ring, and just leaves Punk there to soak in the crowd on his return. So we have the return of Punk, and we have our main event for All Out set. It's him against Moxley to unify the titles. And
then you get the beautiful moment of Punk essentially re-winning the title in Chicago.
Yes. Well, see, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because I think, and I might be alone in this one, I think Moxley had been so good as the interim champion. Like, he's taken a situation where AEW was in complete and total flux and basically said, give me the ball, and he's run with it as far as like past the touchdown line. He's like all the way into like the back of the stadium. He's gone that far past the line, to the point where I feel very conflicted about whether I want to see Punk win the title here.
I think that's good. I think that's definitely what they want you to feel. And I agree, Moxley's been great. But I'm sure that so much of what they wanted was built around Punk that they're probably just eager to get back on track.
But this is a big main event. I mean, think about it. And again, I saw this tweet about it, tweet or like a Facebook post about this. On that weekend, we're going to see McIntyre against Roman Reigns for at least one world championship, however it ends up going. And then Punk versus Moxley on the other night.
I think
those are huge title matches.
Absolutely. And they're going to be huge shows because the stadium show, WWE's really hyping up Clash of the Castle to be like a major event. All Out is always a major event. I'm really excited for that weekend of wrestling because I think if things keep going the way they're going, they're only going to get better. And you got Grand Slam coming. You've got WWE will start to build towards WrestleMania season. So it's a very exciting time to be a wrestling fan. And honestly, it feels very good to have CM Punk back. He's happy. He looks so happy to be in a ring. And I don't take any of it for granted, is what I'm saying. And I hope that there are others out there who feel the same, that this could all end. We already lost Punk for quite a few months. So this could all end as quickly as it begins. Let's just enjoy it.
Yeah, so great main event to very good addition of Dynamite on the whole. And yeah, so we have Rampage to look forward to. So we've already talked about the fact that there's going to be a couple of matches involving members of the Trustbusters. There's also going to be a Triple A mixed tag team match, which will pit Guevara and Melo against Sky Blue and Dante Martin. So that should be interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that they have mixed tag team titles.
It'll be interesting because Ty and Melo hasn't had a match in quite a while. So I think this will be our first match on AEW since Double or Nothing, I think.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. You know what? That's something I wasn't even thinking about. I guess that's true.
So yeah, it'd be good to see. I know she's been working other places with Sammy as well, so like I'm sure she won't be rusty, but like it's good to see her back. It'd be good to see her back in the ring. I believe the other match we have on Rampage is something that also was highlighted in Dynamite, which is the Gun Club versus Beardhausen, Danhausen, and Eric Redbeard.
I like that Redbeard just shows up and like they're just like, here, we got a spot for you. You want to come to work? And it just works.
On Rampage, they've also announced that we're going to see promo segments featuring Keith Lee and Swerve Scott. We've got Bryan Danielson will be speaking on Rampage as well, and we'll also hear from someone else as well.
I believe it's another champion.
Hook.
We'll hear from Hook, and we'll hear from Swerve and Keith Lee.
Yeah. So we'll see what that is. That's ahead of next week on Dynamite. We're having Daniel Garcia and Danielson in the in a 2 out of 3 falls match.
I like it. I hope that's as good as you would think it would be on paper.
Yeah. We're also seeing the first match of the Trios tournament, which is going to be the Bucks and their mystery partner against Los Faction Ingobernables.
And they're definitely teasing that they're definitely trying to get you hyped for Kenny. I don't think that they can miss with that mystery partner. Because, like, realistically, who else have they teamed with? It's like Kenny or Coda. It's like, you've got so many choices, and they're all going to be fan favorites.
Yeah, unfortunately, like a lot of the potential choices that it could be to make them even more excited are in WWE, which is it can't be Styles, it can't be Owens, it can't be some other people, it can't be Cody.
That is true.
So, but yeah, the likelihood is it's going to be Omega, and they're doing the same thing they did with like the Punk thing, where they're not explicitly telling you it's Kenny, but they're doing everything in their power to make you feel like it's Kenny Omega. So, but yeah, that should be a fun episode of Dynamite next week, and we'll be talking about that on the next edition of the Hot Tags. Again, it'll probably be the two of us while Tony continues to take a nice bit of a relaxation, or as much relaxation as a guy like him can take.
I believe he's enjoying himself in Brazil, so it will probably be the two of us again next week, and I look forward to it. And we'll probably be talking about G1, probably talking about Omega, and a lot of other good stuff in the world of wrestling.
Yep, and hopefully not so much the bad stuff, but in this news cycle, it seems like it's pretty inevitable. But so thank you all for listening, of course, and just to throw a few more plugs out the way. So we've already mentioned the Patreon, the YouTube membership, and the merch, but obviously one of the best ways that you can support us as well is going over to the website smarkatmoment.com and checking out all the articles, all the news, all the resources. Pester Tony about the heel and face stuff. I'm sure he's still picking that stuff up, even though he's taking a break right now. And mention the merch stuff. There's also Fanboys Anonymous, the sister site, where you get all the latest stuff about geek culture, movies, TV, comic books, video games, all that stuff you find over on fanboysanonymous.com. Also check out their Patreon, check out their YouTube channel, all of that great stuff. Also on the website, you'll be able to find both the Fantasy League and check out all the updates on there, and the Power Rankings, which is my weekly contribution. But make sure you're also checking out the Triple Threat and the Women's Wrestling Weekly and all the other great weekly content, and the just the ad hoc stuff that's going up there as well. And also check out everything that Rob's doing, because Rob's doing a lot.
Yeah, I'm always working in the world of wrestling media, so you can check me out everywhere at Dude Felice. That's on all the social media platforms. You can check out Fightful.com, Fightful Select, WrestleZone.com. Really, if it's on the internet and it's wrestling related, I'm probably either writing about it or working with the people writing about it. So just check all that stuff out, and thank you for the support.
Absolutely. You can find me at Wigmeister14. And that brings us to the end of the hot tags of the week, edition 558. And we'll see you next week for the following edition. And of course, make sure you're staying tuned to the channel. If you're not subscribed already, subscribe now. Hit that notification bell so you'll be able to know exactly when the next edition of both the hot tags and our Mount Rushmore slash what's it?
It's the Mount Rushmore. It's the top rope list.
Top
it's
rope
a
list,
long one, and actually,
a pretty long edition where we talk about the very best of the British wrestlers, both from WWE and all over the wrestling landscape.
Yeah, and I think, as I've said in that one that you'll hear, and I'll say it here right now, we do appreciate all the support, and please always consider that even $1 tier on that Patreon goes a long way.
Absolutely. Any support you can give, whether it's like the financially supporting the Patreon, whether it's buying a piece of merchandise, or whether it's just hitting a like on the video, or hopping over to the website and checking out a few of the pages, or sharing them around on forums or with your friends, any level of support is greatly, greatly appreciated. And we thank you for those who consistently show their support as well. So that's all from us, and we will see you next time we see you. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.